good evening, and welcome to Tea Time.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tea Time. I'm so glad you're joining me tonight. It is March 25th. It's the end of the month already. I'm going to talk about my weekend and get to my guests because, you know, my 55 minutes goes real quick. Friday I was here, beautiful Paradise Studios. I ended up here for karaoke and open mic, and we had a great time here. So if you're not doing anything on a Friday night, come on down at 7 o'clock. Saturday, I did Murdered by the Mob in Manhattan at the Iron Bar in the city. You haven't seen it yet? It's like going to an Italian wedding. Someone gets whacked. You got to figure it out. You sing, you dance, you eat, you drink. It's so much fun. Just go to murderedbythemob.com to look up all our upcoming shows, and I hope to see you there. Sunday, yesterday, I was in Jersey for the Garden State Film Festival for the movie Jersey Bread. That's B-R-E-D. And I have some pics with that I was with some friends who were in the movie and there to support. So what's the first pic we've got up there? There's Gino Caffarelli. He did the movie Cruise. There's Ed Shin. He is the official film festival photographer all over the place. And then we have Chris Mormondo, who's in Gravesend. Everyone Loves Charlie and Jersey Bread. So look for that. And then there's Lorenzo Antonucci. Oh, I got to get that right. Also amazing. Everyone did a great job. It's Greg Russo's movie. There's my best friend over there, Joe D'Onofrio. Also an amazing actor. So I just want to thank everyone for supporting, and shout out to Greg Russo. Wrote it, directed, produced it, and it was really, really, really good. We had a great time, and then we had an after party. So listen, I'm excited because I met this man a while ago. Gave me his book, and it took me a while to read because it was giving me agita, and I had to keep putting it down, and I had a really hard time getting through it. But an amazing, amazing, amazing read. He's an actor, he's a producer, he's an author. Randy Jurgensen is here. Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Finally got you here.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Fine.
Good,
fine.
good, good. All right, so I want everyone to get to know you and about your amazing career and the different turns and twists that it's taken throughout the years. Okay. You know, you grew up in Harlem, West Harlem, and you really never left because you end up living there, working there, and doing everything there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And go ahead.
So,
don't be shy. Got to talk.
So before we start, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Welcome.
I'd like to give a shout out to a few of my friends.
Sure.
You know, Joe Cirillo and Joe Mazzilli and Joe Donnie Brasco Pistone, and especially to Father Chris from my Italian parish, Our Lady of Pompeii. Yeah. Yes, I was born in West Harlem. I was born 2 blocks south of 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. And I was born at home because there was some kind of a measles or mumps outbreak at the hospital that my mom went to.
Wow.
So they sent her home, and I was born at home. And my parents were superintendents of the building. And for 19 years of my life growing up, my parents were superintendents. In fact, my brother and myself running in the streets, the people would say, "Oh, we know you, you're the Rafferty boys," or "We know you, you're the Smith boy," "Oh, we know you, you're the Supers kids." So we were the Supers kids. I think it's important to share with you the times that I grew up in. In my neighborhood, you know, there were a couple of bars. There was a tailor shop, a grocery store, a meat market.
A lot of mom and pop stores.
Oh
back
yes,
then.
yes, and and there was the bookmaker, and there was the man who took the sports bets, and there was the man who took the numbers bets, and you know, we also knew that there was a lady of the evening of where she lived over. So I knew that neighborhood inside and out, and in fact, I knew at a very young age some of the people's business, in that the rents were $28 a month. Theresa, and you know, being superintendents, we collected the rents, and every now and then there'd be a knock on the door that they couldn't make the $28. So I grew up in that neighborhood. I never missed a meal. I had clothes, you know, and I literally grew up in the street. You know, came home from school, get out there, go in the street. We made up our own games and so forth and so on. I bring that up, Theresa, because, you know, to jump ahead from when I was an adult and I became a cop, you know, I worked in the same neighborhood. I was on the west side of 125th Street. And if I went to 125th Street and I looked 3 or 4 blocks over to the east, there was the Apollo Theater. And then my first assignment as a cop was in the 25th Precinct, which was a very diverse precinct. The east side of the precinct, it was Italian, and they spoke Italian. In the middle of the precinct, it was Spanish. They spoke Spanish. And then we had all the way over onto 5th Avenue and Madison Avenue. That was black. It was a very, very defined precinct in terms of the people that resided there. So, you know, you could be a policeman one way, you know, in this neighborhood, and 4 or 5 blocks over, you were a different policeman. So, and I saw immediately when I was there, I knew who was taking numbers. I knew who the bookmaker was. You know, there was no fooling me. I was born in, you know, born and raised out in the streets in that environment.
Well, I heard you played with someone in those streets named George Carlin. Is that true?
Yeah, George Carlin, you know, to a degree, a lot of times was a thorn in my side.
Was he?
Yeah, but
he liked to break them, right?
Oh, George Carlin was bright, quick.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do homework.
Wow.
Yeah, George Carlin, at 12 years of age, was the first one that brought pot to us, you know. Yeah, George was a leader in a lot of things.
He was, huh?
Yeah.
So he goes into comedy, and you actually joined the Army, correct?
I did.
Which, thank you for your service, by the way.
You know, in my neighborhood there, being raised in the Second World War, you know, in my neighborhood, it was basically everybody couldn't wait to get into the service, you know. So at 16, I started, you know, you couldn't join the Army without your parents' signature. So at 16, I started, and my dad, who was the most patient, loving, wonderful father that you could ever have, and his famous words were, "What did your mother say? What is your mother going to do?" Yeah, that was it. So I learned that my mother. So he said to my mother one day, he said, "Betty, you go ahead and sign, because I'm not going to sign." So that stopped me from the mother. So there was 3 or 4 of us, and I'll call one guy's name. His name was Nicky Matskew. That we went down to 42nd Street. Nicky Matskew was 2 months shy of being 16. I was 2 months shy of being 17. And we went down there and we gave the papers. And I'll always remember when he came to me, he said, "Well, what about your father?" And I said, "Oh, I lost my father. My father's dead." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he kept it up. And at 16, I went in. And Nicky Matskew, He went in at 15.
Wow.
2 months later, I got caught. They sent me back home. In the meantime, I had signed up there to become a paratrooper because I understood that there was extra money in it.
Right.
So he never got caught. I came home, and when I turned 17, my father said, would you stay home for Christmas, and then you can go. And of course, I went immediately after Christmas. The day that I went, it was my mother's birthday.
Oh, wow.
So I left, yes, and I went into the service. I went over to Korea.
Yes.
You know, and it was a war, and
yeah, that was the Battle of the Pork Chop Hill, and that was the Korean War. And you were actually decorated with 3 Bronze Stars and the Purple Heart.
Yeah, I got my 3rd star, on Pork Chop Hill. And I have to say this, Theresa. There's a man sitting in the audience out here.
Yes,
His name is Joe Cirillo.
And he was with you.
That was called the Iron Triangle at that time. And it was Baldy, Pork Chop, and Hill 598. And he was on Baldy.
Yeah.
And thank God they held Baldy. Otherwise, we would have really, really been out of luck.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I came home. And
you came home and then you joined the police department?
well, there was no work.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no work for
Okay.
us. You know, I believe the Silhouettes were singing "Get a Job," and this is also very important. I went in at 17, and it was Frank Sinatra, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller,
Wow.
Harry James. Believe me,
All the greats.
And I came home. And it was 4 black guys up on a stage virtually singing a cappella.
Right.
You know, and that's my music.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's my music.
Yeah.
Of course, it's come down to be rock and roll, but it's the oldies. That was my music.
Oldies and goodies.
So one day, Theresa, I was playing stickball along with everybody else, and we were unemployed. And Uncle Sam gave us $26 a week for 26 weeks.
Wow.
And Theresa, I was a wise guy. I never went to high school, not one day.
Wow.
So during that period, I went back to school and I got a GED. And this guy came along with some job applications. And I'll never forget it. It was the police department, the fire department, the police department, and the Department of Parks. And I filled them all out.
Wow.
I never had an intention or a calling to be a cop.
Really?
Never.
So what did you want as a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, were you into sports? What were you into? Was there something that you just said, oh, I want to do that when I get older?
I was into taking illegal numbers.
Okay.
I was into steering people to where the gambling dens were,
Right.
which I was getting paid for.
I'm sure very good money.
I was really.
You were a hustler.
Believe me.
You were a hustler.
I was really one of the proudest times back then, and I had a group of guys with me, is that I was going down to the store on 125th Street, and I was going to buy and pay for my own shoes. 4 of us went down there, you know, to buy the. Hey, Randy's going to buy his own shoes. Yeah, so that's what I was really into.
Yeah.
And then when I came home, I guess to a degree, like a lot of guys, I was really lost. I was 19.
Yeah.
Playing stickball. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But I went back to taking numbers. I went back to, you know.
It's what you knew.
Yes, to doing that. By no means, Theresa, is this a felony crime that I'm committing, you know?
Right.
Okay. So, and of course, George Carlin is there. And the police department was the first one to call.
That's it.
So when I went down there, and the police academy at that time was only 3 months old. Now, I had an incident.
Wow.
I had an incident when I was home that the sergeant who was investigating me called up and he said, "We're wise to you, Jurgensen. We see that you've been arrested. You've been arrested here in a place of bookmaking, a wire room and stuff like that. You've been arrested twice. You think you're fooling us?" And this is exactly what he said. "You think you're a war hero and that's going to get over that?"
Wow.
And I said, "Sergeant, what do you mean I've been arrested?" He says, "Well, you were arrested," and he gave the date. And I said, "Sergeant, I was 2 years old." It was my father.
Oh.
And my mother got on the phone, and I said,
Wow.
"That's the end of me being a cop." What my mother didn't say to this guy. to this sergeant on the phone. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. You've been accepted. And so I went down there, and after 3 months, I came out, Theresa, and I was met at my precinct with people that would be lifelong friends.
Yeah.
One of them I actually grew up with, but given that he's 4 or 5 years older than me, so when you're 13 and he's 18, you're not hanging out, and that's Sonny Grasso.
Right.
And Sonny Grasso was very instrumental, which I will get into, in why there is a French Connection movie.
Yes.
It's because of Sonny Grasso.
Wow.
So I'm working in that. Precinct. I'm a rookie, and I commit my first times of corruption. I'm working there, and I'm working in the Italian section. I'm there 2 or 3 weeks, and you could use discretion. You could use discretion then. I learned that people could not afford a $15 double parking summons. I learned this on my own.
Right.
And so, but there was, you could give a summons for wheels not to the curb, which was only $5.
Okay.
And Theresa, remember, I'm talking back in the 50s.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what $15 would be
Compared
today.
to today,
So
sure.
I gave them that summons, you know. So like I say, I'm working that, and one day the barber comes out and he pulls me aside, and pulls me into the shop, and I'm saying, yeah, you know, I'm a brand new cop for 2 or 3 months there.
You're a rookie.
And he's taking my jacket off, sitting me in the chair, and he's got the scissors, and I'm saying, well, no, and I get a haircut. And of course I go in my pocket, and he steps back like I'm pulling a gun on him.
Yeah.
It's almost an insult to offer him money.
Yeah.
That's corruption.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of weeks later, I'm walking down, out comes the tailor. And the tailor comes out. He takes me into the tailor shop. Take your pants off. You know, take your jacket. And he's pressing my pants and my jacket. I don't even offer him money by now. I know it. Out the door I go. But here's what it was meant being a cop back in those days, Theresa. There was a drugstore. And obviously there are drugs in the drugstore.
Yes.
His name was Dave. He was Jewish. And I'm walking one day, and it's like 4 to 12, and he's closing up at 6 o'clock. And he said, officer, and he calls me, well, cop, come on in. He says, I know, he says, and it's rain and it's cold and it's 12 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, and you don't have any place to go and use a bathroom. He says, here's the key.
Wow.
The druggist gives me the key to his store. And of course, 12 o'clock, I go in, I find a hot plate in there. You know, you could put the coffee on it.
Yeah.
The cash register's open with money in it, and as wide as this over here on the glass is every kind of drug there was.
Yeah.
This is the trust, respect, whatever you want to say, that they had for a cop. That I wasn't going to steal anything or do anything.
Wow.
That never left me.
It's amazing.
It really, really never left me.
It's amazing.
So I worked
and you became a detective fairly right away.
Well, couple of people that I met there. One was Nick Cirillo, who came on the job with Joe Cirillo.
Right.
He was a detective there, and I met a couple of cops. Sonny Israel and Tony Altamari. And when I was in the police academy, on 125th Street, and I was taking numbers, and they caught me and put me up against the wall and stuff. And I said, geez, guys, you know, I'm in the police academy. And they said, what? What the hell are you doing? What are you, crazy? And they're in that precinct.
Right.
So I get to that precinct, I got a bit of a reputation, you know. One last story I'll tell you before I become a detective. I was walking down there, and there was this group of guys, you know, and they were on one side of 2nd Avenue, sitting on the chair the wrong way outside of a social club. And it was, hey, rookie, hey, don't shoot yourself. And, you know, it just kept it up. And so finally one day I just walked over to him and I said, you got a problem with me? And he says, yeah, I got a problem with you. And I says, well, we can settle that problem. He says, yeah, but you got a gun. I said, I'll meet you down here after 4 o'clock, which I did. And there was a group of guys that came with me. Sonny Grasso came and so forth. And I went into the backyard, and when we went into the backyard, and I said, "You got a problem with me?" And he said, "Yes, I got a problem with you." Teresa, I hauled off. I broke his nose. Down he went. And I said, "I hope you don't have a problem with me anymore." And I came back out. The next day I came, and the captain called me in.
Oh, no.
And the captain says to me, "Jurgensen," he says, "we don't do things like that. We don't do things like that." He says, and I said, "I'm sorry, it'll never happen again." And he says, "All right, get out of my office." And he said, "Jurgensen, good work." So now I'm riding in a radio car, and we get a gun run.
Yeah.
This is how I became a detective.
Yes.
There's a gun run. And there's a detective's car that was right alongside of me, and Nick Cirillo's in that car. And we go up the stairs as fast as we can. We break the door down. The guy's got a rifle, and he's firing into a courtyard. And, you know, whether with the children in there or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
He was firing into the courtyard, and we broke the door down. And Nick and I both wrestled him to the ground, and we made the newspaper. We got into the newspaper, and the front page on the newspaper. So I went to court with him, and while I'm in court, this captain came over to me in civilian clothes. "How old are you? Where do you work? Are you shaving yet?" Blah, 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 so forth and so on. And he said, "I want you tomorrow to report to the 1st precinct. You report to the 1st precinct,"
okay,
which is today's museum.
Right.
So, Teresa, I went to the precinct the next day, put on my uniform. I went down there, and I was interviewed by a lieutenant to be an undercover narcotic cop. And that lieutenant is Mario Biaggi, who would later on become a congressman. So I went through the same questions and so forth and so on. And he said to me, he went like this, and by now it was like, "Jurgensen, Jurgensen, go up to the precinct, get out of that bag," the bag is the uniform,
yes,
"and come back here."
Right.
And so I came back there, and within a week or two, I was out buying narcotics in Alphabet City and throughout the city.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem. I did not have a problem buying narcotics.
Right. I mean, how scary was it to go into these drug dens, I mean, undercover and, you know, make a bust or, you know, do what you need to do while you're in there? You know, were you alone? Did you have anyone with you?
No, you're alone.
You're alone. So,
You're
I mean,
alone.
it's kind of like scary there.
And the problem is, Teresa, the way that it works, and honestly, the short version, is you get a drug addict in the street. Now, you're dealing with a desperate person here.
Yes, very.
You're going to take his drugs away. This man is desperate.
Yes.
So I got a hold of him, and, you know, it was almost a nothing bust, and I said to him, "Look, you're not working for me." I said, "You won't be on these streets." It just flowed. I spoke his language.
Right.
And I said to him, "You're taking me tomorrow. You're taking me, and you better be here. You're taking me tomorrow to where you're buying drugs, and I'm going to buy drugs."
Right.
Yeah. You know, virtually, you have now put your life in the hands of a very desperate person.
Yes.
And so I met him. We went up there. And he knocked on the door, blah, blah, blah. I know this guy. You know their language. I'm not going to say their language.
No, we can't curse on the show.
No, I'm not going to do that.
It's going to cable.
And so, yep, and I put up my money. I was excited. And stuff like that. Yeah. I bought the drugs. He went his way. I went my way. And the backup is 1 or 2 blocks away. Yeah. I came back out, and I was elated. I was walking on water, you know.
Wow.
Teresa, when you do that for 14 and 15 months, which I did, I almost forgot that I was a cop.
Yeah. They say and when you go undercover for a very long time, you kind of lose yourself. Yeah, it kind of happens,
you know,
right?
So I was doing that. Now, now I'm undercover and I'm a white shield cop.
Okay.
I'm a white shield cop, although that's a detective's unit.
Right.
Now, very important here, Teresa, is that Sonny Grasso and Eddie Egan and Dick Oletta, they're working in an outfit called SIU. That's like a special investigative unit.
Right.
Then I am out in the street buying $75 half loads. Half of it was talcum powder.
Right.
But they're working on keys,
right,
which were worth $32,000 at the time.
Yeah.
And they're working this case. They're working. Every now and then they pulled me over you know, to babysit a witness or to sit on a wiretap or to follow somebody. I was not in the inner circle for that.
Right.
And so this happened almost simultaneously. I go into Alphabet City and I make my buy up on the 5th floor, and I'm coming down and I see hands and sneakers coming up, and I know I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. So I run up, I get on the roof, and they're following me. I run on the roof, jump over the roof a couple, 3 times. I get the fire escape, I run down, and I come out on Delancey Street. Now I know I've either lost them or they're not going to take me off with the crowd.
Right.
Remember we talked about earlier a cop's gut that knows that something...
Yes.
When I came out on Delancey Street, I knew something was not right. The big restaurant there is Ratner's. And Ratner's had a small black and white TV in it, right? And the people were grouped there. And I saw the people sort of wandering or whatever it was. So I made my way over into the 7th precinct. And there's a sergeant behind the desk. And now we do the dance. And the dance is, not everybody back then looked like Eddie Egan.
Right.
They look like Randy Jurgensen. Long hair, not
Right.
shaving,
Right.
nose blown over himself, a
Yeah.
drug addict.
Yeah.
So I give him a few you know, you have 61, that's a crime.
Right,
You have
right,
28
right.
means a day off.
Right.
Okay. So then I give him the drugs. And he's turning to go to put the drugs in the safe.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Sarge, what's wrong? And he said to me, where the F have you been? They just shot and killed the President of the United States.
Wow.
My world stopped. It just stopped. I believe the whole world stopped.
Yes.
It just stopped right there. So I went down to narcotics, full grown men, Second World War, veterans, right, bawling,
Yep.
crying, standing around. I never knew what happened to that arrest. And that went on for about 1 or 2 weeks. But they made that case. And that case, it's been surpassed by quantity, but never quality. It was like 90% pure.
Wow.
And so that got into the paper. And that attracted a writer by the name of Robin Moore, who wrote a book called The Green Berets.
Right.
So he came down to narcotics. He got permission to work with us.
Right.
I virtually never did. And he worked with Sonny and Eddie. And he wrote a book called The French Connection.
Right.
And The French Connection would inevitably turn into the movie, The French Connection movie.
Right.
So at that same time, now, after those 2-3 weeks have gone by, I get called to the district attorney's office.
Yes.
And it's Najari is the district attorney. And this was quite long that we went through, so I'll be short. And they said, you're going into, and they called it the gay world. You're going to be working with homosexuals.
Right.
Here's what's happening. Homosexuals are being cornered, coerced, and shook down.
right.
Shook down, you
Yes.
know. They're going to lose their job.
Right.
They're getting them in compromising situations and so forth and so on. And so that's the world that you're going to go into. It's much more than that, they told me.
Yeah.
So they gave me an apartment on Bleecker Street. And this Theresa would go on for another 6 months.
Wow.
So over there on Bleecker Street, you know, I'm ingratiating himself into, I'm going to call it, the gay world at that
Right,
particular
right.
time. I met a guy down the hall. We used to go to breakfast together. And no, Theresa, I didn't live in that apartment. Of course not. I showed up now and then. I worked nights and
Right,
whatever it was.
right.
And then I went off, you know, into the life that I was supposed to be in. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so while I'm working down there, now I get the word, and I have these meetings. I have these meetings with these captains. And remind me to tell you about the movie. About
the
these
movie.
captains
Yeah.
here, and they said, we now have 3 or 4 homosexuals or gay people that not only have they been killed, but they've been chopped up.
Right.
And so now, now I'm working on killers.
Right.
And from get-go, they suspected that these two
men
were cops.
Right.
And one was black, one was white, and they
Right.
were nicknamed the Salt and Pepper Team.
Right.
So now I'm working on what I'm calling cop killers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there can't be anything more important than that. And I get called over to the district attorney's office. And it's in Jerry again. And Greenwich Village has made a complaint that there's a lewd and indecent act going on in this place called...
A comedian you're talking about.
The Go-Go. A lewd and indecent act.
Yes. And you had to arrest this man,
Yeah,
right?
they put the wire on me. I didn't want a wire. I went over there. We wired him up. Well, again, long story short, this took 3 weeks. Imagine I'm working on a comedian while there's two people out killing people.
Yes.
But that's what I did.
Right.
And so I got him. And, of course, it's Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce, people.
I locked up Lenny Bruce.
Locked up Lenny Bruce.
George Collin.
George Collin announced that at one of the shows, didn't he?
Never forgave me for it.
Didn't he introduce you and say that you locked him up?
So then after I did that, I went back. And good police work and a lot of luck.
Yes.
I got the two guys, but we never got them for the murder. But I got them. They got 7 years apiece.
Okay.
And I got a gold shield.
Right. Wow.
Teresa, I get assigned to the 26th precinct.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, and that was the 26th precinct, I was delivering groceries, and the groceries had beer and cigarettes.
Right.
And there were two cops that would stop me, and they would take the beer, they would take the cigarettes. That's what they would do. And there was some name calling.
Okay.
Racial name calling. And we know you, Super's kid, blah, 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 so forth and so on. I went back to the store, and I told him. And he made believe like it never happened. I went to my father, and my father said, keep your mouth shut. So I did. All right? So I put up with that for about a year.
Wow.
Well, Teresa, I go into the 26th precinct. I got this brand new shield.
Okay.
And there's the two of them. Once again, you know, Randy. So the fight broke out, right?
Wow.
And so the initial report was I was under arrest. I was under arrest in the precinct, you know? And I just sort of sat there and I said to myself, it's worth it, you know? And the two of them, you know, half in the bag, you know. I gave it to them good. So I'm under arrest. So now they hear the story. The captain comes down and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And I told them really what happened. And this one detective, Graham, said, keep your mouth shut. You're going to be okay here.
Yeah.
This never happened.
Okay.
Don't talk about it. Don't do anything like that. And I said, yes. And as far as I know, I'm the only detective that was transferred without orders. I was transferred on a teletype, and they sent me to the 2-8 precinct. And anybody can tell you the 2-8 precinct is, it's first in anything. It's the top on being the toilet.
Okay.
That's everything that's under it.
Got
Dear
it.
God Almighty. First in everything.
Wow.
First in cop killings, first in everything.
Wow.
So I would wound up doing 17 years in the 2-8 precinct. However, what I just told you about locking those people up, locking the salt and pepper team up, in 1979, which I had done 4 or 5 pictures with Billy Freakin, he said to me, Randy, I have optioned a book called Cruising, but only for the title, and you and I are going to sit together, which we did for weeks. And he wrote Cruising.
Yes.
So out of those two things that I was really came the French Connection and came Cruising.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, you know what? We have to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to hear more about it with Randy. Don't go away. Back after these messages.
Wonder Woman was everything to little girls, especially that look like me. She stands for being a voice for people that need a voice. My organization renovates homes for people with disabilities. And when I come home, a self-care routine makes me feel my best. I'm very proud of the difference that we're making, and to see that impact in my community inspires me to work even harder for everyone around me.
All right. Is everybody having a good time tonight or what? That's what I thought.
Hi, I'm Georgia Rose, founder of Zenkuda. You can watch me on the Soul Space podcast every Friday at noon on Channel 20 for spiritual guidance. And as you all know, that is how I first opened into my own psychic gifts, was through the angelic realm, astrology. So we've got Mars and the Sun together in Scorpio, which creates a lot of combustion. In the astrological world, we call that a kazimi, and tarot. When the Four of Cups right side up, it means we have a lot of choices to make and we're not looking at what's really being divinely given to us. We're too busy in the busyness of the choices to really see the divine intervention and the divine timing and the divine guidance. We're the place. Watch the Soul Space podcast.
All right, we're back.
There's no way.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Tea Time. So glad you're joining me. I am with a friend of mine, met him a while ago, read his book. It's amazing. We're going to talk about that. Randy Jurgensen is here. He's an actor, producer, author, also retired policeman. An amazing, amazing career. Just so much to get to, and I want to get it all in. We talked earlier. Well, I just want to give some quick shout-outs. Hello to Sal Grasso, Paul's watching, Bruno, Michael, and Greg. Thank you, everyone. Share this and watch it. And also, we're going to get to his book. But in the meantime, 2 collars that you made, 2 arrests that you made, went into making of 2 huge movies. One was The French Connection, which you mentioned before. We have a couple of pics with that. There you are. There's Gene Hackman. With that pick. And the next pick, what's that from? Because I wasn't too sure what the second one was pick. Is that from the same movie, French Connection? Okay, and then also you did mention, which I have this. We're going to put this up, right? I think that's The Godfather, because after the French Connection, hold on. After the French Connection, am I pulling the right one, right?
It's French Connection.
Yes, after the French Connection, which was done in 1971, then in 1972 came along The Godfather. So obviously what you did was you became a major technical advisor for film and television, and you really were an actor, because I
entered Screen Actors
Guild.
You
did.
From the French Connection.
You did, and then you did French Connection. You did The Godfather. You have over 30 credits on IMDb. You also produced and associate produced and tech advisor. You had your hands in a lot of bags, so to speak. You did 7 Up with Roy Schneider. I never say his name right. Which you play a detective.
That's written by Sonny Grasso.
Yeah, but you also did 2 other movies with him as well. A lot of people you worked with, you worked with them more than once.
Right.
You did The Sorcerer, and if I'm right, the seven Ups, which you did.
Well, the person that I really worked with throughout all those movies is the director, Billy Friedkin.
Right. So that's important to mention. And you also did
friend that I've lost.
Contract on Cherry Street with Frank Sinatra.
It was.
Hello.
Oh boy.
That's like a pinch me moment.
Oh, that was a blast.
How crazy was that? And then you did Blood Brothers with Richard Gere and Paul Sorvino.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. You did The Brinks Job with Peter Falk and Peter Boyle. You did Superman with Christopher Reeves.
Yes.
You did one of my favorites, Fort Apache the Bronx. Okay,
Danny
with
Aiello.
Danny and Paul Newman and Asner, Ken Wall. You did The Vigilante with Robert Forster. You also was a associate producer on that as well.
On which one?
On the Vigilante.
Vigilante.
Yes. You did Still of the Night, again with Roy, Meryl Streep, Jessica Tandy.
Maniac.
Maniac. You did Still of the Night, you did Jura with Demi Moore and Alec Baldwin. Okay? You did Thinner. Well, that was a Stephen King film and you produced it.
Yes.
Okay, on and on and on, people. Donnie Brasco, one of my faves with Al Pacino, Johnny Depp, Michael Madsen, who I had the pleasure of interviewing. 1995, now we're going into Die Hard, Revenge with Bruce Willis, Samuel Jackson, and you were a tech advisor on that.
Yes.
This is this is not a list of just stars. Hello, this is like A game here. I mean,
I was jogging with Burt Reynolds when Screen Actors Guild went on strike, and Burt Reynolds said, "See ya." he went back to California.
Did he really?
Right.
I mean, the list goes on and on. And again, you also produced. You produced Goose with Jennifer Tilly, associate producer. You did New York Cop with Mira Sorvino, co-producer. In the Shadow of a Killer, Scott Bakula, and again, executive producer, A Time to Remember. And in these movies, hello, you were also in them. You played detectives. You've played a plethora of you also played bad guys too.
Yeah, I did.
Did you like playing the bad guys, Randy? Come on, tell me the truth. Did you like putting on that hat?
There's not a heck of a lot of difference from a cop and a bad guy up on certain
It's
levels.
just the clothing. It's the clothing that's different.
And the pinky ring.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's amazing. It's just amazing what you've done and how, just two arrests lead to two major, again, cruising with Pacino and Gene Hackman and the French Connection. I mean,
Shadow of a Killer is
Yes.
is about a detective who's against against capital punishment, which I have always been in. I was marked by a picture called the Oxbow Incident of Dana Andrews and Henry Fonda, and so I had actually done a commercial against capital punishment.
Yeah.
And I was out one night with my sister and my brother-in-law, and got involved and so forth and so on. And the two soldiers, not soldiers in the army, soldiers from the boys in Brooklyn.
Yes.
They offed the cop. He actually practically died in front of me.
Wow.
And after a struggle and a shot and so forth, I got both of them. And John Kiernan, when we were in the precinct, John Kiernan said, and this is his exact words, John Kiernan said, well, the cop is white, the two people that have killed the cop is white, the detective that has arrested them is white, we're going for the electric chair. And I had already made a commercial that I was against the electric chair.
Wow.
So that got to be pretty hairy after a while, and of course, out of that came the $50,000 that was placed on my head.
Yeah.
But that's what that movie's about. Shadow of a Killer.
Wow.
It's about Scott Bakula playing me.
Right.
Which after dailies, Theresa, he came to me one day. Did you see the dailies? And I said, yeah. He said, do you like them? I said, yeah. He said, did you notice anything? I said, no. He said, Randy, I'm playing it left-handed. You're left-handed.
Look at that.
That's what actors do.
Wow.
That's what they do.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But so that was the bounty on your head. This was an undercover investigation again. Members of the Black Liberation Army.
Well,
right?
that's a different one.
That's a different story.
That's a different one.
So wait, before we get to that, there's just so much to get to. I just wanted to back up a second and mention also 1987. You did Heat with Steve Buscemi. And you produced that and you wrote it.
Hart.
Correct? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hart.
I didn't say
Steve
Hart, not
Buscemi
he, Hart.
and
Sorry, Hart.
and
you wrote it, and you
I did.
produced it.
James Lemo and I wrote that.
Yes.
We wrote that. Yeah, that was. I originally
Now,
wrote
did
it.
someone
I
approach
originally
you to
wrote it
write?
for Treat Williams.
Yes?
As a
Oh, I
middleweight,
love
Treat
him.
Williams wasn't available, so we got Brad Davis.
Okay.
And Brad Davis was losing his life at the time. We never knew it.
Wow.
We never knew it.
Wow.
He passed on of AIDS. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We wrote Heart. Yes.
I'm sorry. I put, it does say Hart. I misread it. Sorry.
That's
So,
Steve Buscemi's first acting.
very first film.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, so I want to get to this undercover investigation that you were doing. The Black Liberation Army, and at one point they had placed a bounty on your head. Very scary thing, and I'm sure it was. But what happened with that? What was that? Was that before the 19?
Again, in 1971.
Yes.
I just come off the trial of convicting the two of them, and the federal government struck down capital punishment as unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And so they got 25 to life. They served 40 years. One died in prison.
Wow.
And one is out.
Yeah.
But as soon as that was over, the Black Liberation Army, with no social redeeming value whatsoever on any level,
Right.
They, and these are the terms that I've always used, they executed Piagentini and Jones. And Theresa, 13 cops would be set up and killed. And those 13 cops, they were Irish, Italian, Spanish, black, white, sergeant, cop. They were killing cops.
Right.
No matter what your color was, your
Yeah, it didn't
ethnic
matter.
group, they were killing cops.
Yeah.
That was their mission.
Right.
So I was working that night, and I got a call, and I went to Harlem Hospital, and Piagentini and Jones were there. Jones was still on the operating table. Piagentini was downstairs in the morgue, and I undressed Piagentini. I saw in his hat his 3 kids, and the toughest thing I had to do, Theresa, was take off his wedding band. And I then later on met his wife, and we remained friends. I attended the children's high school graduations and stuff, and we just lost her about 3 or 4 months ago. But then Seidman put together a group, and it was headed up by Nick Cirillo. And he put together a group, and I drew Piagentini, Butler drew Jones, and off went the investigation. And I'll never forget it, what Seidman said to us, and there were 7 of us, and Seidman said to us, and don't effing come home until you get them.
Wow.
Well, my wife is sitting out there, and she
Yeah.
will tell you,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there was 4 and 5 days that I just never came home
Right,
because I was
right.
in St. Louis, I was here, so
Yeah.
forth and so on. And yes, that was the start of the killings of the Black Liberation Army.
Right.
Now, that happened in 1971.
Right.
And then again, while that's going on, I'm working the motion picture, The French Connection.
Yes, yes.
I was in the East Coast Stuntmen's Association,
Yes.
so I wound up doing a lot of driving in the
Yeah,
French
yeah,
Connection.
yeah.
So I'm doing that. I'm doing the French Connection,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife will tell you I'm never home.
Well, I have to tell you also what I left out was when he did The Godfather, he was one of the guys that shot Sonny
Yes.
at the toll booth.
Yes.
Where was that filmed? Tell everyone where that was
Yeah,
filmed.
outside of Nassau Community College, Coppola came to us and said that, I understand you guys were paratroopers. I said, yeah. And he said, paratroopers have machine guns. And I said, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we got it. that took about 3 days. There was quite a
Yeah,
difficult
yeah, yeah.
scene
I
to
heard
do.
it was a long
just
shoot.
just the shooting. Never
Yes,
mind.
yeah.
Never mind Jimmy Kahn.
Yeah, yeah.
But just the shooting. The guns weren't simultaneously working. The candy glass wasn't breaking. So finally, Coppola came and he said, "Look, Randy, stop holding the gun in your left hand because the camera's on the right. Put it on your hand, and if the gun doesn't go off, poke it through the glass and go rat-tat-tat." And we did.
Wow.
And they had the shot. And I
Yeah.
went over and I kicked Jimmy Kahn. And at the end of the scene, Coppola
Yeah, I know
came,
you kicked him.
Yeah, Coppola came over to me and he said, "You know, you're going to be the most hated man in America." And I said, "Why?" And he says,
'Cause you
"There's
kicked
not a
Jimmy in the
female.
head."
There's not a female that's
kidding?
not
I was
in
mad at
love
you too.
with Sonny Corleone." He says, "And you killed him." Teresa, for
my
the longest of
God.
times,
That's so
I
funny.
would get emails to the man who shot Sonny Corleone. This is what I was known as, the guy who shot Sonny
Wow.
Corleone. If it wasn't hard enough that George Carlin was telling people I locked up Lenny Bruce,
Yeah, right?
everybody was saying that I shot Sonny Corleone.
Well,
yeah.
listen, I have to, you know, my show goes so fast, but we have to talk about your book. This is an amazing book, people. It's called Circle of Six, the true story of New York's most notorious cop killer and the cop who risked everything to catch him. An amazing, amazing read. Thank you for that. You know, Joe Pistone wrote, "Jurgensen is the genuine article. He stands among some of the best detectives in the NYPD. The Mosque case of 1972 is the most famous case amongst the rank and file of NYPD, and the Circle of Six, no holes barred." This is an incredible read. I was getting so ticked off reading this that I had to keep putting it down and coming back to it and putting it down and coming back to it. Your life changed on April 14th, 1972.
I did.
And this book incorporates everything that you went through, from landing in the hospital to coming out of the hospital to making a promise to yourself to catch the killer of Philip Cardillo, who was killed, unfortunately, that day. A lot of people were too young to remember, maybe, and we only have a few minutes left, but I just want you to tell me how cathartic and hard this was to write, and how now you'd like to make it into a motion picture, and who is doing that screenplay right now for you.
Well, the thing about that is that there were other books and other articles, and all of the books in the Selwyn Rabb from the New York Times really wrote. It got into People magazine, but they all of them said they did this, they did that. So I was determined that I was not going to write a book that they did this, they did that.
Right.
And so it took some digging and it took some homework and stuff like that. And so I named the people, you know, that I felt was most responsible for what happened that day. And the one thing that I would like to say upon people is that during that time, 13 cops were set up and executed, and it was all boots on the ground. It was go get them. Nothing was spared to go get them. On this case here,
yeah, very
nothing.
different. Very, very different.
No, nothing. In fact, they got in the way. They stood in the way.
A lot of
It's
corruption.
a great
Yep.
embarrassment.
Yeah,
you know?
it was horrific.
But yes, the book right now, there is a man by the name of Bill Teitler, a well-known producer of Hurricane and
with
Jumanji.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel
Yes.
Washington with all the Jumanji movies, and he's actually writing the screenplay.
Wow, amazing.
He's writing the screenplay. It's not being adapted from the book.
Right.
No, it has nothing to do with the book.
Okay.
He is writing. He's presently writing the screenplay. So this time, Teresa, we all got our fingers crossed. We'll hope that
I do too, because
it makes it a big screen.
It's an amazing story. It really
Thank you.
is. It should have never happened.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you again for your service, in the service, at home. You know, you've had an incredible. Randy, you have to come back, because I only did a part 2 with Joe Cirillo, but I'm going to do part 2 with you. You have so many stories to tell. I'm so
problem.
sorry I can't get to all of them, but I wanted to get to, the main ones we wanted to talk about.
And Theresa, I gave a shout out to a lot of people.
Yes.
All while I went through that,
Yes.
all of those years I went through that,
Yeah.
I had a wife.
Yes, Lynn. Shout out to Lynn. Who was by your side, thick and thin, and through the caca and
Trust me.
the good times and bad times, and
Trust me.
and she's a saint as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
And she's
You
Italian.
found a good woman. Of course she's Italian. Come on, are you kidding? Thank you again for
You're
being
welcome.
here. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I really, really do appreciate
welcome,
it. I
Theresa.
really do. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to just say, Carmine, if you could put up that pic, please, of my aunt. I'm dedicating the show to my Aunt Millie, who passed away. Aunt Millie Montori, rest in peace. I love you. Thank you, Carmine, for that. Again, thank you, Randy, for this. My door is open. You come back anytime you want, because we have to do a part 2 with you.
Come back with Joe Cirillo.
We really do. Oh, wow. What a tag team that's going to be. All right. Listen, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting Tea Time. I really appreciate it. Remember, tell everyone you love them. And I'll see you next week. Ciao. Say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.